AFL Hub Performance podcast. My name is Jack McLean. I'm your host, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by David Gray. We're going to be talking all things mindset and how to integrate high performance mindset into your performance program. Welcome, Davey. Thanks for jumping on, mate. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, morning, Jack. Thanks for the invite to come on.
No doubt, most of those working in high performance sport, mate, will be well aware of your background. But for those tuning in, perhaps parents of athletes or athletes themselves or practitioners sort of new to the industry, how did it all start for you, mate? Where did you find your passion for high performance sport, and then take us through your journey so far?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad at uni back in Scotland at Edinburgh University, did a degree in sports science. I was always interested in sport, performance development. And then in 2005, I kind of landed my first job in professional sport with a rugby club down in England, Exeter Chiefs. It was kind of good timing. I'd been playing international sevens rugby for a few years before that. It was kind of semi-professional, and then that was doing bits and bobs of strength and conditioning work through that time as well, and then landed a full-time gig with the club down in England, and just loved it. Loved being involved in that sort of performance space, trying to help guys get better. And from there, my wife's a Kiwi girl, so after a couple of years down in Exeter, we moved out to New Zealand, where I've been based ever since. And I started working over here in the academy setup at a province called Taranaki, one of the provincial unions in New Zealand, and then moved up to work with the provincial squad. And then 2009 sort of got a big break, I suppose. I got an opportunity to come down and work in Wellington with the Hurricanes in Super Rugby. So I took that on board. It's been awesome, and I've been here. Can't get rid of me. I've been here ever since. Did a number of years, probably through till maybe the back end of the COVID time. So 2020, 2021 is sort of head of strength and conditioning, head of physical performance role. And then I started my own consultancy company. I'm really interested in, as I mentioned, performance, but I have a real interest in mindset, high pressure situations. So I created a little business, and I'm now still contract to the Hurricanes, but also to some different sports teams, individuals, developmental athletes, professional athletes, people working in other performance industries like the police, emergency medicine, and some businesses, and just try and provide performance support, mainly around mindset, but some of it's a bit more holistic around lifestyle factors or just living that high performance life, really, which I think anyone, if you're a builder, you're a business owner, you're a teacher, you're a developmental athlete, having a knowledge and understanding of some of that stuff can be hugely beneficial. So I've done my master's degree on the way, and I'm just currently halfway through my PhD looking at mindset and high pressure, high performance environments, which has been really cool. So trying to apply some of that knowledge into the real world is kind of how I split my time at the moment, sometime in academia and sometime in the applied setting. So yeah, it's kind of me in a bit of a nutshell.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Yeah, it's something you don't hear about all the time in strength and conditioning coaches. Obviously, you grew all the way through pathways through to high performance role, and then move into the mindset space. Was there a particular moment or maybe challenges or problems that you were witnessing that you could sort of see where you can make an impact, where you made that shift, or was it just sort of a natural evolution? Clearly, it's something that's a big passion of yours at the moment.
Yeah, like a bit of both. I could feel myself getting a little bit stale in my previous role. I'd been there obviously a number of years, and just felt there was an opportunity to grow in other areas personally, and also had a real interest in the mind. And I think even some of my strength and conditioning philosophy, it really involved working with athletes and getting their buy-in and motivation, things like that. So I think I've always had an interest in that space. And I've been around a number of different psychologists and things that have worked in sport, and they're all excellent. But I think, maybe coming from that physical prep background, is maybe more comfortable to be out on the grass with the players, working with coaches, not necessarily always having one-on-ones with players and things like that. And I just felt there was an opportunity to grow in that area, personally, professionally, and also try and impact players in different ways. And I think that's probably what's happened over the last sort of four years or so. It's been a bit of a journey. It's at the start it was kind of strange, coming from a role like yourself where you're right in the thick of it all the time to, a mindset role which was new in our environment at that time. It felt like you were a little bit detached for a while. It was kind of quite challenging because you weren't in the thick of the action all the time.
Yeah.
But I just sort of learned, got some good advice with people, and then just took, just sort of made it happen. So I've tried to create a role now where it's really, really involved in the day-to-day program. There's no surprise if I turn up in a gym now. I'm not there to coach strength and conditioning anymore, but I might be working on mindset. There's no surprise if I'm out in the grass next to the coaches or talking to players during training drills, because we're trying to get a mindset element into the work we're doing. So it's been a good journey.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's obviously we'll unpack it a little bit later on around the topic, but it sounds like it's heavily integrated into the whole program with what you explained there, in both the gym, on the field, but also with the coaches. Is it something that athletes can book in with you one-on-one, but also at the same time you're sort of just part of the environment and you sort of can raise it and intervene where you see fit?
Yeah, there's a bit of everything. So from one end, one-on-one sessions, so they still do happen. Team education sessions, it might be something to do with mindset. It might be linking in something that's from the technical or tactical space that I might deliver an aspect, and then the coach might support that with the real technical or tactical detail. But I might introduce the concept through to different challenges on the grass. We're the big focus at the moment is working with our other staff. So at Hurricanes, so how we're embedding the mindset sort of framework we have into strength and conditioning, into our rehab, into our recovery, how we can use mindset as I almost sort of think about mindset now as being like a supplement. Where, if you asked an athlete, what supplements do you take to get more powerful? They might say creatine. What do you take to become bigger in the gym? They might say a protein powder. But I've used mindset as a complementary supplement that works across nearly every area: learning, skill acquisition, physiology, recovery from injury, recovery from training. So that's kind of I think about it, how we can embed that, and not just through me, but through coaches, staff, leaders, other players. I think's where the magic can really start to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you said there, that especially S&C medical tend to spend a lot of time with the athletes, so there's a big part of the environment. Do you split almost 50-50 your time and energy with staff and players, or is it still a bit more dominant working with the players?
I'd probably, if I put a ratio on it, I'd probably say 60-40, 60 with the players,
Right.
40 with the staff. Most of that has probably been to date with the technical tactical coaches, so our head coach and the assistant coaches. And as I say, like the next evolution is to embed that. So that's a big focus for the upcoming season, as to how we can embed that more effectively across the different departments, if you like.
And going back to your career so far, mate, who have been the biggest influences, mentors, if you like, that have shaped your philosophy today?
Yeah, I was having to think of it. So I don't know if I've got sort of like one classic mentor per se, but there's definitely been lots of people who have influenced me in a really positive way. From coaches to other members of staff to the athletes you work with. I've always been quite influenced. Probably early in my career, there was a guy in the UK. He was a older conditioning coach in professional football, soccer. Spent a lot of time in South America. A guy called Roger Spry, and he was excellent. So worked in South America, across Europe. So he was an English guy, but his approach to conditioning was really different. It involved music. It was quite influenced by sort of Brazilian philosophies and different tempos. And I spent a bit of time with him, and I'm not saying that I just took everything he did and used it, but it certainly kind of opened my mind to what other options are available. We tend to probably come through the same education pathways or the same accreditational system, and we're all can become relatively similar in our thinking. But it's just a nice way to see how other cultures develop the physical aspects. So that was quite influential.
How did he use
People,
music?
what's
That's
that say?
how did he use music with his conditioning?
Oh, so he had different tempos, like different beats per minute, and movements and sequences had to happen on the beat, and
Like a
it was
metronome.
quite.
Yeah.
So something you're doing something like, or even in the sort of gym environment. So it could be body weight. You're trying to do some kind of lunge variation, but at a tempo that's adjusted to beats of the music with some task off the back end of it. So it was quite an interesting sort of philosophy, and again, not so much that I probably have used aspects of it, but it was more the sort of opening your mind to
Yeah.
not just thinking, squat, deadlift, power clean type mindset.
Yeah.
Guys like Christian Cook, who's done a lot of research in high performance sport, he's been quite a big influence. Got a good relationship with him. He's an amazing guy. Shares a lot of information, but I just pick up from everyone I work with, and curious, so I like to listen to other podcasts and speak to people and just get a little bit uncomfortable and reach out to experts, and just you always pick up something. So yeah, that's probably how I've learned.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. And what about highlights that sort of spring front of mind that you're most proud of?
Yeah, recently in the last 12 months, I did some work with the Scottish rugby team, the Test match team. So that was amazing as a Scotsman, going back to Edinburgh to work with Scotland and turn up at Murrayfield and singing Flower of Scotland against the Springboks was it was amazing. It was a real highlight. Obviously around performance environments, when you win things, it's quite nice. So winning Super Rugby a few years ago now with the Hurricanes, worked with New Zealand Sevens a few years ago, and we won the World Series Sevens. We had a great season. So things like that do stand out, but also probably just some of the small things. Just when maybe a player comes up to the end of the season and just shakes your hand and gives you a beer and says, "Oh mate, thanks for you really helped me this year," or maybe they're leaving the club and they thank you and give you a gift or something. There was one of our players sent me quite a nice gift recently, just for some work I'd done with him, and so I think like that, they kind of stick with you. Those highlights, and not necessarily things that you promote or put on social media, but that kind of human element's always quite nice touches as well.
Yeah. And on the flip side, obviously in high performance sport, there's it's pressure every day to push limits and maximize everything that we do. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced, and how did you sort of grow or learn from facing those challenges?
Yeah, so I think realizing that everyone feels pressure at different times. So you know, I'm a human being, so I do feel pressure and stress at times, like everyone. But just because maybe I'm not feeling pressure doesn't mean that, for example, the head coach isn't feeling pressure, or I might be feeling pressure, but somebody else isn't. So being aware that how you feel isn't necessarily representative of how everyone else is feeling. It could be, but most people, the things that stress them out, the stressors in the environment can be different for different people. So I think that awareness, and then just also understanding, I think maybe when I was younger, certainly in the strength and conditioning field, you maybe thought your way was the only way. And, if you didn't get what you wanted, other people were wrong, and you're maybe a little bit pig-headed and narrow in my thinking. And, it's kind of related to pressure, isn't it? When the pressure comes on in a sporting environment, maybe more time has to get allocated to, the technical, tactical, because the game model, the game plan's just not working. We need more time in the training pitch, and the flip side of that is there's less time in the gym, or there's less time for in-season conditioning or whatever it might be. So, not taking things personally, just realizing that you're a part of the chain, you're a piece of the pie, and when pressure comes on, I don't think you necessarily change tack completely, but there has to be some flexibility and adaptability in the plan, and sometimes you have to take it. sometimes you get given a bit more as well. So they're probably like learnings over the years, I would say.
Yeah. I think that would be one that resonates with anyone that's worked in the industry. If there's one constant, it's being adaptable and constant change. Even if you have been like yourself at Hurricanes for a significant amount of time, it's usually going to be leadership positions. Obviously, clearly player turnover. So each year's a different iteration of that club. In some sense, that could make it even more challenging to adapt, I guess, because you can get used to doing things the way that it had been done. And for those that have found themselves at a club for a number of years, and maybe they're going through a bit of change, new head coach or new significant amount of turnover in the playing list, how do you find that ability? Like, what's the best way to process, I guess, how to go about your role and still, looking after the big rocks, I guess, of your role, but also being nimble and, like you said, not pig-headed and adapt to what the environment needs or what the players need.
Yeah. Well, I've been fortunate over the years. I've worked for a few head coaches, particularly at the Hurricanes. And I think, no surprise, I think the first objective is always to build a relationship, isn't it? And build trust and respect and, in both directions, and get an understanding of, ultimately the head coach in a sporting sense is the boss. He's the guy who's mainly on the chopping block. So his head's on the chopping block. So understanding what they require at the moment, that's from a mindset perspective. Previously, it was from a physical perspective, how that always relates back into the game model. And I think good organizations probably have really good clarity on their vision, their mission, their values, which provides that guiding framework for behaviors. And, I think you would expect a strong organization would have continuity around vision and mission and behaviors, even if the head coach changed, unless they're in maybe a really bad spot and they need a whole culture change. But I think things like that give you the framework for how to operate, and then the relationship with those key personnel allows you to then shape and maybe tweak your process a little bit to fit their particular needs. And again, it's probably not moving away from your authentic self and your authentic beliefs. So, but sometimes I think, and I've maybe been guilty of this in the past, but we maybe overly focus on the differences in opinion. And when you actually take a step back, you might have a coach who's got a little bit of a different perspective on this, but most of the stuff you're talking about, you're very aligned. But we can get really caught up on, like, maybe it's 5% of the whole thing, and that becomes like the biggest thing in the world. Where maybe just realizing that we've got 95% alignment, and we have to tweak here as a better mindset. But maybe,
That's so true.
Ego, credibility, they all can sometimes get in the way, can't they, of those types of things.
Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah, talking about awareness, that's a good reminder probably to have that, somewhere tucked away front of mind. That it's so true. Everyone, generally speaking, if everyone's there with the right intent, you're probably there doing 95% of with the same alignment. But it's that little thing that you're getting stuck on, you're spending and maybe losing a bit too much energy on too, where it's not a big of a deal.
Yeah.
If you've got 95%, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue, I guess. We talked about pressure a little bit before, and obviously you're, studying it from a PhD perspective, but obviously worked in the game for a long time. So finger on the pulse of what the best players do in the biggest moments. I guess for athletes or parents of athletes, coaches themselves, looking to help prepare athletes, but also, like you said, it applies to everyone. CEOs, how to be your best every day and win those moments, whatever they are for you. What do you feel separates those that do it, I guess, at the best of their ability more consistently than those that are maybe still finding their recipe in terms of those high pressure moments?
I think the best and the best people under pressure, they've developed tools and strategies that allow them to step in and commit when the pressure's on, and they don't pause and they don't step away. They're willing to step into that environment and execute. And there's obviously multiple aspects feed into that. But I think, maybe at the start, realizing that everyone, I touched on it before, everyone feels pressure, everyone will be stressed. Sometimes maybe as a wider culture, there's this perception that maybe the top athletes or the top military operators or the top emergency medicine responders, they're ice cool all the time, and that's not true. When you speak to these guys or you hear them interviewed or you see things on Instagram, they'll often, there's one famous clip of Tiger Woods talking about holing the putt on the 18th, and he talks about, do I feel shaky? Yes. Do I feel nervous? Yes. Do I feel sick in my stomach? Yes. So everyone feels it, and don't get caught up in the fallacy of, if you're feeling pressure, feeling stress, there's something wrong with you. That'd probably be the first thing. A couple of key things to think about, certainly from my experience and my own research, would be your mindset towards stress. So there's two mindsets that are quite big in the literature. One is a stress is enhancing mindset, and one is stress is debilitating. And people who have a belief that stressful situations can be beneficial, you can thrive in those situations, perform better than people who think that stress is a negative, stress is detrimental to performance. There's also stress appraisals, which can combine with that really closely. So people that appraise or evaluate, for example, butterflies in the stomach, or maybe you get a dry throat, or you're a little bit shaky. People who understand that those are just symptoms of really adaptive changes that are happening in your body. So your body's changing, your brain's interpreted there's something important coming up. It's literally changing lots of different aspects of your body to allow your best performance to become possible. So it's releasing cortisol to sharpen your attention. It's releasing adrenaline to give you more energy, power, explosiveness. It's changing blood flow into certain, your limbs to allow you to become more agile, faster. Which, if you asked an athlete, would you like to be faster, more explosive, more coordinated, be able to pick up cues in the environment and process those more quickly? Everyone would say yes. But probably the general society is, if you're nervous, you're not prepared, you're underprepared, you're not ready, don't do it, which is the complete opposite. So just realizing that those signs, they don't feel good. Like it's not nice having to go to the bathroom lots of times. It's not nice feeling shaky. It's not nice having a bit of self-doubt, but that's really the price of entry into high performance, and how you view them through your mindset. And then you can obviously apply different strategies into that as well to manage your stress level if it gets a little bit too high. But I think the big one is just realizing that everyone feels stress, everyone feels pressure, and use it as a real positive to performance, and educate yourself on why these things are happening and the benefits of them. They're adaptive to performance. And once you get to that state, you view pressure in a different light. There's a few other factors that contribute as well, but that'd be a real core aspect of that.
I guess if we go into like a scenario to bring it to life, like if you're consulting at a club and there was a few players that the coach wanted you to work with because they vomited just before the game, and he perceived that as like maybe a stress performance inhibitor. Would you in that notion, is it not necessarily changing the fact that they vomit, but just the mindset around the fact that that's them preparing to arousal levels, like you said, and all the benefits that come with their body preparing for their peak performance of the week? Is it not shifting away from not vomiting before the game, but just the mindset around it, being that it's potentially a good thing to prepare them to be switched on?
Yeah, definitely realizing that what's happening with that player that's vomited, there's lots of good things. Now, it's not to say that necessarily encourage vomiting. We might want to, maybe that guy's stress level's gone a little bit too far.
It's overwhelming.
So we might pump the brakes a little bit and just give him tools and strategies to down regulate, maybe through some breathwork patterns, for example. So obviously there's a negative. If somebody vomits, you're probably losing fluids. You might be losing some little bits of food that you've got to digest. So maybe there's lack of energy later in the game or something like that. So, if people are vomiting, maybe just bring it back a little bit. But the sort of premise that the reason they are vomiting is likely because their brains try to shift things out their gut because it's not prioritizing blood flow to the gut anymore. It's prioritizing blood flow out into the legs, the arms, to the brain, which is a really positive sign for performance. So again, probably general speaking, if somebody did vomit, people would go, "Oh, he's scared, he's frightened, or she's not ready." But it's your interpretation of that and then managing it appropriately so you've got the right, as I say, probably stressing not vomiting is not necessarily what we're trying to achieve here, but it could be part of the process for somebody.
Yeah, it's not like necessarily you're viewing that as like, oh, we need to stop them from vomiting. That's the first process. It's more the mindset around the fact that they're vomiting.
Yeah, and checking how they perceive it. So do they perceive
the coaches
if
as
they
well.
happen if they vomit, how does everyone perceive it?
Yeah.
And understanding why that might be happening, and then that can change how you do interpret that and your beliefs around it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of coaches, like you mentioned, that's a fair focus of your role at the moment. What does that look like? Is that a weekly meeting? Is it sitting in their critical meetings and being involved that way, like from a collaboration piece? Talk us through your work there.
Yeah, so it's really, my role's really immersed with the coaches. So I sit in a lot of their coaches meetings, a lot of planning meetings, sit in all the team meetings, the unit meetings, try and add value where possible. So I might, within a team meeting, I might ask a question in the group, if I want a bit more information on something, if I feel it's going to help the group. Work with the coaches. So we have a bit of a framework we've developed. It's pretty simple. We just call it learn, challenge, and win mindsets. And they're based on a little bit of theory. For example, the learn mindset is really closely attached to the growth mindset concept, which I'm sure most of your listeners and viewers will have heard of. So we use that as an overarching framework, and then we try and embed that language, learn, challenge, or win into everything we're doing. So when the coaches are designing a training session, I'll be sitting in the room. I won't necessarily contribute to the training drill design because that's not my role, but I'll be asking, okay, what mindset do we want the players to be in here? What's the objective? Then that might filter down into like our coach behaviors. So if we're a learn mindset, what type of questions might we ask the group during the training? What tempo of training are we going to operate at that time? Are we going to get players to collaborate before they feed back? Are we going to ask them how they feel? How we move, how we present ourselves. We might move a little bit slower. We might be more open in our body language. So we're trying to create this learning environment around what we're doing. So my job is to help the coaches bring that to life. But quite different if we're in, for example, our win mindset, which is, basically execute your job no matter what is happening, whether there's distraction, chaos, fatigue, pressure, speed, unfair refereeing, whatever it might be. The type of questions or the coach involvement in those drills might be quite different, and we try and embed that across, like I just mentioned, on-field training, how we work in team meetings. So I might, for example, send the message out. I'll speak to the coach. I might send the message out the night before, say tomorrow we're starting the meeting, challenge mindset. There'll be a focus on defense. And then players with prime players, if you're smart, you'd probably have a look at your notes and video clips on defense, so you're ready. And then we might have things where in the past we've had one or two stools at the front of the room, give guys raffle tickets, draw the number out. They got to come to the front. I'll have pre-prepared questions that the coaches have given me. I'll ask the player, and the player's got to convince his peers in the coaching group that they know the details. So again, that's the challenge. Quite often there's a little bit of pressure or stress can arise. That's a little bit confronting, but based on our mindset principles of stress is beneficial, this is good, it's an opportunity to step in and commit, even though I feel your natural reaction maybe want to withdraw or not be involved. Here's an opportunity to practice stepping in like we want to do when the pressure comes on in a game. So there's all that aspect which is really, really integrated with the coaches.
Is that something that those three, the learn, challenge, and the win, is that something you periodize? Like naturally early in preseason, there's a bit more learn mindset going on. As you get into in season, perhaps a bit more of a challenge slash win, or is it more just on a daily? What are you seeing? Where's the group at? What does the environment need? Yeah, talk us through. I guess how do you plan it?
Yeah, I don't have like a formal periodized plan like you may have in, say, the physical prep, but it probably naturally does periodize itself. Like you say, early in your pre-season, there's going to be a lot of learning focus. It's unlikely that on day one you're going to go straight to high pressure, demand, perfect execution, of music blaring, because people are going to be on different pages. And then even across the season, it probably tends to naturally periodize across the week. Maybe Monday more of a learning focus, Tuesday, Thursday becomes a lot of elements of learn, but more challenge and win mindsets. And I've just developed, I've just been working away and just sent it through to our coaches for another bit of feedback, linking all that into a skill acquisition framework. So what's even a little bit more detail, what's the focus in the sessions? So for example, in a learn mindset, are we trying to replay skills that we've already developed? Or are we trying to maybe refine and develop new skills? Or are we trying to retrieve? So there's kind of different components within those frameworks now that will probably create that sort of natural flow across the week. But I think it's important to practice everything and having the players understand what these mindsets can do. Like I mentioned before at the start, around the mindset being a supplement. So if we're introducing new information, players understanding that they can learn, they can develop, they can increase their knowledge, and having different tools and strategies maybe before the session or after the session to assist them with that process. And same for our challenge mindset, and same for the win mindset.
For players that I guess you've identified, they work on their self-awareness. But what are some of your favorite sort of tools or strategies to help develop that self-awareness with players?
Yeah, a couple of things I go to are like mindfulness. There's a lot of good evidence coming out. I was a little bit dubious, to be fair, a few years ago about mindfulness, and then I've read more of the research. And when guys that are operating in the military special forces are using mindfulness and finding it benefits performance, I'm pretty sure it can help most athletes. So, it's a little bit of an individual flavor of that. Some guys get right into it, some guys don't. But also just another really easy thing to do is just sort of introducing periods of, I just call it like low sensory stimulation into your day. So it might be like going for a walk without necessarily listening to a podcast, just allowing your mind to wander, or driving your car with the radio off and just thinking and being aware and paying attention. And there's quite nice little strategies like 3-2-1s, they could call them, where if you're walking along, 3 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell see, and 3 things that you can maybe feel or smell. And you just have to tune into your environment. Obviously, you have to be very present, become a little bit more aware. Once you've done 3, then you go to 2, then you go to 1. So it might only take you a few minutes, but it's quite a nice way to bring awareness to yourself. And even just things like taking 2 minutes just to sit with your eyes shut and just listen, like sort of listen to your thoughts and just see what bubbles up there. You'll get some random stuff bubbles into your mind, if you're like me anyway. And that's just, to me, like simple ways to become a little bit more aware. Like what do I sort of think about? Are they a little bit more positively orientated or negatively orientated? What do they mean, if anything? Are they just thoughts? Do we have to worry about them? They're simple ways to work on your awareness and self-awareness, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks, mate. That's great. Actionable tips for anyone looking to develop in that space. What about from a training environment point of view? So psychological safety sort of gets thrown around a fair bit, and developing, I guess, an environment that has constructive feedback and open and honest conversations. in the best environments you've seen, what helps foster that in a playing group?
Yeah, I think it's probably important to say at the start, like psychologically safe doesn't mean psychologically soft. So we're not necessarily saying the environments are soft, but you're right. Psychological safety does appear to be a critical factor in performance. There's a nice model. It's called a facilitative environment. So an appropriate balance of challenge, uh, balance with an appropriate amount of support, and they call that a facilitative. So you can get a high challenge, high support environment. That's optimal. And like I touched on it before, I think having a really clear vision, mission, values that drives the behaviours is a key first step, because then that should set up how people think and behave in the environment. So if you want it to be psychologically safe, have those frameworks in place. But leadership are critical, and that could be leadership could, in a sporting sense, could be the head coach or heads of department, but it could also be the player leadership group. Everyone is influencing everyone else all the time. So in my mind, everyone's an influencer or a leader. Some people have more formal roles, but maybe people in those more formal roles demonstrating vulnerability, you have to role model and live the behaviors that you want to see. Putting systems and processes in place that allow people to have conversations. So, for example, one of the things we have at the Hurricanes is a little framework called See, Share, and Solve. So we're trying to encourage people to, if they see things, share it and then try and solve it. So if somebody sees something during a training session, we don't want them to wait until the next day at the team meeting to put their hand up and say, oh, I saw that this was happening, because we've just wasted the rest of that session and a few hours after it. So if you see something, share it, and let's solve it if it needs to be solved there and then. And so having those little frameworks, and then, when people display the promising behaviors, like rewarding that, acknowledging it, making it open, welcoming it, I think they're all ways that you can start to create that sort of psychological safety, and allowing people to make mistakes. And I like that. Go back to that sort of framework, learn and challenge mindsets. We're comfortable with people making errors and mistakes in there. Somebody might put their hand up at a team meeting to answer a question, but they get the question completely wrong. Often we'll be like, love the conviction, how you've taken a chance to commit, because that's what we're after around here. And not having people laugh at that person or shut them down and say, mate, what, if you know, there any homework, rewarding the bravery, rewarding the behaviors that we're after, I think is really important. And then people start to come along for the ride.
What are some of the obvious signs that it's an area that the environment needs to work on, do you think?
So if there's no psychological safety,
it's lacking in the environment, or perhaps it's definitely an area that needs a lot of focus. What would be some of the things you'd sort of see or hear about?
I think you'd probably see an environment where, like, a couple of things that I would think about would be, how many knocks on the door does the coach get? Mm-hmm. So if you've got an environment where the coach sits in his office and no player off their own back goes up and walks in there, have a conversation and knocks, if you've got 0 knocks on your door all week, as a head coach, as a business leader, as a principal of a high school or something, like, you've probably got an environment where people don't have the safety to come and have conversations and ask things. That might be a nice way. There's always a little bit of hesitancy in big group meetings, but if you're regularly asking questions and nobody's prepared to put their hand up and have a crack, that'd be a sign, I think, that people are scared. And then you maybe just get a feel for it. Do you see like little cliques developing in the environment? Do people always sit together? Does it have sometimes just that gut feel that maybe there's tension, there's disconnect, different departments start to withdraw, maybe hear some corridor conversations that are, oh, so-and-so's doing this, or this department never listens to us. You start to just pick up those signals, and I think all those would be kind of alerts and sirens that the environment's not where it needs to be.
And what would, for maybe a leader or anyone that has that feeling in their own environment at the moment, listening to this, what would be some of the actionables, do you think, to sort of take?
Yeah, probably just goes back to the previous one. I'd go back and have we got clarity on our values and behaviours, and if we have, are they aligned to what we're seeing? Because if not, we need to address it and bring people back in. And ideally, people aren't normally deliberately horrible or bad. They've just lost their way a little bit. So usually people are good, so you can bring them back into the environment. But if not, ultimately in the long run, maybe you have to get rid of people and find people with sort of recruit on character. If you get people who are very talented with good character, that's obviously amazing. But you'd probably rather take somebody who's less experienced or needs to develop, but has a really sound character and will live those values. So that might be a little bit of a longer term process, but I think just addressing it and putting systems and processes in place. It might be reviews, it might be mentors, it could be your induction process. All those little things you can bring in immediately and try and foster and nudge the environment. So I think, like any environment, like a psychologically safe environment, like probably the wider environment, I don't think it's ever good or bad. It's just a continuum. And you've been around sports teams as well. Sometimes your environment's really good, and maybe you take your focus off, and everyone starts to focus on the next evolution of our performance, and that goes quite well. But then in 12 months' time, we realise that the environment suffered a little bit, and then the focus needs to go back on that. So it's a dynamic, living beast. And like you say, if you've got in sports teams, you've got new people coming in, people leaving, so it's always different. And same in business, same in schools. There's always people leaving, always new ones coming in. So the environment's always got to be changing. So you need to stay on top of it and just have probably systems and processes in place that allow you to try and live the behaviours that you're after day to day.
It seems like it's in the mindset space, it's something now that it's been around. Like the best teams have made it pretty famous over the last probably 10, 20 years, how important it is and how it's a bit of an edge as well. So I think self-awareness now is pretty common in the industry of the importance of mindset. But perhaps I imagine in your role, it's still something that, there's different levels of where people are at in their journey, and on how much attention they put to it, perhaps in their week as well. Do you feel it's getting to the point now where there's a bit bigger impact at pathways and academies and younger age? And is it limitless on what age you can start in this space? I imagine it is, just like the physical.
Yeah. It's
and who's doing it well, if there is any that you've heard of? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a real mixed bag, to be honest. So I did some research recently. I surveyed nearly like 300 quite elite level sort of participants, so Olympic athletes, pro athletes, special forces soldiers, tactical police, elite level coaches, things like that. So it's quite a nice population. I suppose firstly, people's understanding of what mindset actually is. So it's a term that's thrown around all the time. If you look at any TV interview or talk show or something, people will be like, the mindset. But one of the questions I asked people was, what does mindset mean to you? And some people talk about belief, some people talk about a way of thinking, some people talk about my attitude, some people talk about confidence. So I think within organizations, even defining what the term means, because then people have a shared mental model on what we're actually talking about. And that's probably step one. Because I think at the moment, if you use the word mindset in a group setting, you're guaranteed that everyone well, not everyone, but a lot of people are thinking different versions of that.
Yeah.
You can start any age, I reckon. Mindsets, it's probably part nature, part nurture. How you're, going back even to, sort of smaller kids, how the parents talk to them. Do they talk about outcomes? Do they talk about effort and process more? So, I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else, but when I look at my kids, one of them's just done his exams at school, worked really hard, studied well. We don't know the results yet, but we've congratulated him and taken him out for a dinner to reward the process. Now, hopefully he gets good outcomes, but he might not. But I keep saying to him, like, the behaviours and actions and sort of mindset he's taken in, that's the win, really. I think in sport, a lot of say youngsters, the coaches maybe get caught up in. It's hard to say that winning's not important, but it's not the most important thing. And you can really influence young people coming through, and then, like, even at the pro level, there's some guys who are way more invested into their mindset and want to do the work, and some guys who don't. And it's probably the same in a lot of different areas in pro sport. Some guys love the gym, some guys just kind of tick the box, some guys love doing the hard conditioning work, some guys just get through. So there's a whole mixed bag, but I certainly think, as a bit of a general statement, that when you look at performance across those different sort of work sectors I've mentioned, if you think about technical skill sets, tactical skill sets, physical skill sets, like, most environments have those done pretty well. But the mind is often, sometimes it's done really well, and sometimes there's nothing at all. So I think, for example, in this research that I mentioned, something like 30 to 35% of the performance support staff, so coaches, strength and conditioning, physios, and it was a similar number, I think it was about 30% of the performers, so that was the athlete, the special forces operator, the tactical cop, had received no formal mindset training or education in their professional career. So,
wow.
But then they talk about it being critical to performance. But then, so there's a real disconnect. Now, again, some environments will do it very well, some won't do it at all. Some will have, there'll be a lack of budget, there'll be a lack of resource, a lack of maybe. That's been the quite amazing thing about mindset, is it's talked about so lot, but where do you go to learn about it? Like, where do you start? What's the frameworks? What's the plan? Who's the local person I can go and trust? That's not just somebody that says they know about mindset because they maybe had a high level career. They might know stuff, but it's a really fascinating area so I think it's definitely the area that has got the most room for. There's a lot of low hanging fruit anyway around the mindset space to grab, and the environments I've been in, it's not optimized yet.
I mean, as a parent myself of a 6-year-old that's starting to get into, they're starting to play games now where there's scores and those sort of things, you do start thinking about it, and there's obviously it's highly complex because every child's different, and like you said, how they approach a loss, a win, the drive home that every parent has. How do you approach it yourself? And obviously parents themselves are emotionally attached to their kids as well. So it's probably more challenging, I find, than any professional athlete you work with. That the complexity of how you approach this. On one note, you could think, the outcome is important, like you said, like them being disappointed after a loss. It's a team sport. Where maybe they played really well, but the team lost and they're disappointed. There's a part of me that's like, well, that's a good thing, because the outcome is important, like you said.
Yeah.
And they may have done their best effort and their absolute best they can, but it's also how do they help their teammates to get the outcome. And that's an area that you can lean into. But then at the same time, we hear about process and how important that is, and ultimately that's all you can control. The whole team could have played their absolute best, and the other team was just better on the day. And that's probably what you need to be proud of.
100%. But there's a nice little process that your listeners might like, and you can obviously adapt this. So this is probably a bit more suited to professionals, but the concept could be applied to 6-year-olds as well. But so I have a little process where often when we review performance, it's straight to outcome. So just get people to think about and rate their mindset, and then think about and rate their decisions. So, for example, you could say, what were you seeing at that moment? What were you hearing? What were you feeling? So rate the mindset, talk about the mindset? You know, were you thinking I was, you know, here's an example. Let's play it out. So you talk to a person, and you say, what was your mindset? Reflect back, and they say, okay, I was feeling really positive. I was feeling quite commanding. I was feeling like I wanted to dictate the tempo of the game. So you probably go, okay, cool. That sounds quite good. What was your decision at that moment? I heard a call like left. I'd scanned. I thought there was space there. I thought I could take a touch and play the pass. Okay, that sounds quite good. Skill set. Took a nice touch. You know, let's say it was football. I took a nice touch, first touch, set myself up, and I tried to clip a long diagonal over the top to that player that was free. Oh, okay, that sounds excellent. What was the outcome? You know, this is a 8-year-old kid. I mishit the ball and I lacked power in my leg because I'm only 8 years old, and the ball didn't fly where I wanted to, and it landed at their guy's feet on the opposition. Okay, outcome like not so good. What can we learn from that? So then, you know, if you just jump straight to the outcome, or you kicked it to the opposition, they ran up there and
Yeah.
dribbled.
It squashes all the other.
Exactly, you suck.
Yeah.
Whereas there's all those good things in behind that, and then the next stage would be what can we learn from that, and then what's next. Or, and again, not saying this is necessarily for 8-year-olds, but maybe I work on maybe I have to improve my leg strength or my flexibility to allow me to, you know, get in a position where I can kick the ball harder. So I think like that type of process, and obviously adapting it in an age appropriate manner, could be quite a nice tool for pros or,
Oh,
you know,
100%.
a dad of a 6-year-old to, because he can really elicit like the learning part of it is how can we learn from that? That's like a key mindset. You know, you look at growth mindset research, there's so much evidence that viewing things as learning, instilling a growth mindset of how can I get better. There's so much positive stuff comes out of that, and that's quite a nice little process to maybe take away the winning and losing, or I scored 3 goals and, you know, should have got 5 or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes me think of actually yesterday, you know, integrating a new player back into the group who's been out of the group with rehab for a while, and naturally would have been nervous, and he put himself out there and commanded the ball, but he fumbled the ball and sort of, you know, made a mistake. And one of the leaders sort of, you know, gave him some good feedback.
yeah.
They do. And that was his last drill that he was integrating with the groups. Then obviously after it, he was pretty disappointed in himself and wanted to work on his, you know, one touch grab and pass execution work. But that's hence why you're probably spending a bit of time now with the staff. That's a good opportunity for myself to reflect on, well, it was good that you put yourself out there. You know, it was your first drill for a while and you're commanding for the ball. Yeah. You know, that's a positive and tick. And then, okay, let's work on the execution part, you know, where he was clearly just in a negative mindset, I guess, about the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then if that guy co-creates his action plan of, okay, I'm going to come in tomorrow, or I'm going to come in every day for 20 minutes early for the next 3 weeks, and I'm just going to work on throwing the ball off the rebounder on the wall and just getting that early catch, just get that back in my system again. Suddenly he's got that loop. And rather than him going home last night feeling terrible, and, you know, from a mindset perspective, that's now changed his physiology, it's changed his motivation, it's got to change what he pays attention to, it's got to change some of his behaviors today. As a supplement, you've now supplemented it, so now his physiology has changed in a more adaptive way. He's got to become more engaged in his learning, more motivated. So, you know, and I think, like I touched on before, that's where the balance comes of the lack of maybe awareness around, because everyone's influencing. So the guy you mentioned, the senior pro who maybe gave him a serve by the sounds of it, it's probably well intentioned, but might have quite a negative effect. And one of the things that we work hard on at the Hurricanes, we have sort of non-negotiables around intent, effort, and focus. So it's obviously a little bit difficult to judge. It's not like a GPS unit can tell you, but if it feels like somebody's got real intent, real effort, and real focus, and they make a mistake, well, like that's life sometimes, you know what I mean? And having that sort of that becomes then like the mindset culture of the whole environment, the whole team, the whole organization is it supporting and adaptive. And it's not to say, sort of linking back to psychological safety, we're not psychologically soft. If somebody's got no intent, no focus, and they make an error, boom, like they're getting it. It's below the level. But we can't, in my opinion anyway, usually make an error because you're trying something and you're stepping up. And if we ask people what type of behaviors would we like people to do, we'd probably say if they try and step up, we'd love it. So
yeah.
It's always that sort of catch-22, isn't it?
Oh, 100%, 100%. We could talk for hours, Davey, on on this mindset. I'm mindful of your time, mate. But is there anything? Obviously, I've got 3 pages of notes. There's a fair amount that I've asked you, but is there anything that we haven't touched on when it comes to integrating, mindset into performance programs that you want to touch on before I last few questions, the wrap-up questions?
Yeah, I think the only thing quickly is, without going into detail, is everyone that's every interaction is a mindset opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, every conversation, every email, every text message, every presentation of a bit of information, every education session, every handshake, everything is influencing people's mindsets, and mindsets have really self-fulfilling effects. So if you do that well, the outcomes will self-fulfill in a positive and adaptive direction. So just something for people, without going into all the detail, something people think about.
It's a great way to wrap it up, and something to think about for sure. Off topic, but still in the professional sense, any pet peeves, anything that sort of fires you up from an industry perspective?
Pet peeves. I'll tell you what does annoy me is when you get really talented athletes that you feel aren't fulfilling their potential, maybe lack a little bit of motivation. And I sometimes kick myself, like, how haven't I managed to connect? How haven't I managed to almost give them the shake to see how good you could be? So part of that's it myself, need to get better, and part of it's probably at the athlete. It's frustrating when you see somebody's just got talent dripping out their ears and maybe take it for granted a little bit and don't fulfill it. It can be annoying.
Yep. I'm sure that resonates with most. What about favorite way to spend a day off?
I'm right into my golf at the moment. My youngest boy's golfing, so a bit of a, I don't know, day off, a nice brunch somewhere, game of golf, and I don't know, some good weather. That'd be
How good?
I'd like it.
Yeah. And what about? Do you have a popular? An opinion that goes against popular sort of mainstream consensus?
Yeah, so this question, I was thinking about it. Maybe a couple. I've got this thing at the moment about do the opposite. So
Mm-hmm.
I look around, not so much in performance environments, but like society as general, and it doesn't look like that many people are happy and healthy. So I've sort of got this thing about 3 times a day, do the opposite. So, for example, if I was on a bus going somewhere, everyone's on their phones, I would look out the window and just see what's going on. So I just do the opposite. Or if it's a cold day outside and everyone's sitting inside at a cafe, I might sit outside. Just, I don't know why I'm doing that. And probably the other one, I've been doing some work with the Australian rugby sevens team, and I was talking to them, and I'm not sure where I heard it, but people talk like high performance environments, like the rule of thirds, like 1/3 of the time you feel good, one third of the time you feel average, 1/3 of the time you feel bad. But everyone does the work on the good days. Most people do it on the average days, and only the kind of elite do it on the bad days, and that becomes your separator. So something that I'm doing at the moment is I'm trying to reframe. Sounds a bit strange, and I want to wake up and it's a bad day, because then it means that I'll get after it, and that's what's like creating the separation. So I've been talking to some athletes that I'm working with, and I'm like, surely you want to wake up and it's like a real bad day, so you can just get after it and you create, the separation. So I don't know if that's good advice or not, but certainly something I've been thinking about. Because the good days are easy, aren't they? Everyone does it on the good days. So that's maybe the opposite of.
Almost, it's an opportunity when it's a bad day.
Exactly, it's an opportunity to really test yourself and get better, and that's. If you think about like deposits into a bank account, if you do it on a good day, it's maybe like putting $1 in.
Yeah.
Do it on a bad day, it's like maybe putting $10 in, so you start to get your readiness bank account goes way up.
Interesting. You got to be careful what you attract, eh?
Yeah,
I guess it comes down to what's a bad day, but
yeah.
yeah. What about we're at the pointy end of 2025, pretty much end of November of this recording. What are you most excited about for the rest of the year, but leaning into next year, 2026?
I really, still really pumped, like working with the teams that I'm working with. Really excited for the Hurricanes. Been loving the work with the Aussie boys. Excited about my professional doctorate of writing up a couple of articles that I'll hopefully publish in the next little while, and then box on with the next stage of research, which I think could start to answer some of the questions. The plan is to try and develop an applied mindset training framework for use in environment. So where do we start? What does it involve? How do you progress it? So really applied. So that's something I'm really excited about. See if I can get something published, test my academic writing skills out. I don't know how that'll go, but yeah, that's kind of. I've got a few trips planned with the family, so that's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. That sounds like a great year ahead, mate. Well, yeah, thanks again for jumping on. Really appreciate your time, Davey, and also sharing with us not only your journey in high performance sport and giving some tips that want to work in high performance sport, but also some actual tips for parents, businessmen, athletes, coaches, anyone really that's looking to maximize their days and a happy sort of healthy life, really, to get the most out of themselves. So really appreciate it. I've taken heaps out of it, and no doubt listeners have as well. If anyone that's got any follow-up questions, where's the best place to connect or follow up?
Yeah, they could just reach out to me on LinkedIn. So under David Gray or flowstate.New Zealand, and also on Instagram. I think my business is flowstate.NZ. So those two ways would probably be the easiest way to get hold of me if you're interested in something.
Perfect. Yep. We'll add both the links to Dave's LinkedIn as well as the Instagram Flowstate in the show notes. So thank you for everyone that's tuned in. If you tuned in at the end here or halfway through, make sure to wind it back on our YouTube channel for the time being. Releasing on our podcasts in the coming weeks. Our next live chat is with Greg King, which will be 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, the 18th of December. So I look forward to seeing you guys then.